As accordance to me covering Clan Ravnos last week, and in the fact that I have been enjoying the absolute beautiful, beautiful fever dream that is Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, beautiful game by the way, I've decided to go down a completely different beautiful fever dream that is covering the Week of Nightmares story event in World of Darkness. It is one of the most convoluted story points I've ever read in a tabletop setting, mainly in the fact that World of Darkness is such an absolute clusterfuck of whatever they have in this giant world with vampires, werewolves, mages, hunters, changelings, demons, wraiths, whatever else they have, more things probably. This is the beginning of Gehenna. And the best way I can explain the Week of Nightmares is just doing my damnedest to break it down in chronological order. Because I do mean it is absolutely convoluted. There's a lot going on and frankly, very stupid. And I mean that in the most endearing way I can. I adore this plot point. All those insults I'm giving it, I say it out of love. And mainly the Week of Nightmares. When does this take place? 1999 is the main point, and the presumed date is June 28th to July 4th. Presumed, that's the key point. Now, you would think that an event so absolutely traumatizing would, be more written down, but when you really stop to think about it, the people that would be there to make note of this are either dead, have a very good vested interest in making sure no one remembers this event, or are too traumatized to want to bring it up. So the Week of Nightmares began first with a lot of blood being shed. Surprisingly, not with the antediluvian that would soon wake up. First, with some battles between the Kuei-jin, which we'll get into later, and Clan Ravnos. Mainly in the general, India, Pakistan, that area, they were fighting. Now, there's a little known detail when it comes to kindred dying. When a lot of them die, they send reverberations through their bloodline. With all this blood being shed, the antediluvian of Clan Ravnos, who I'll be referring to as Zapasathura, he woke up from torpor and immediately started draining the Ravnos Methuselah and just went to town. This sent absolute shockwaves in the supernatural world. First things first, everybody that was attuned to the supernatural had the immediate understanding that something was wrong, something bad just happened, and they don't know what. Vampires all around the world started having horrific nightmares. They couldn't remember it. They felt like they were forgetting something very important. Clan Ravnos felt it a little deeper. Anybody who was just a little kooky, maybe psychic, or just tied to the supernatural in some way, started having these very metaphorical visions of a monster rampaging through Pakistan and India, which is what happened as Zapasathura started waging war throughout the area, just hunting for blood, rampaging and drinking as he went, to where the Kuei-jin, that I mentioned earlier, started moving in to intercept. All right, context time. We have our first variant supernatural faction coming into play. The Kuei-jin that I mentioned. Who are they? Okay, so they are vampires, kinda. So in absolute pure white wolf fashion, they are Asian vampires. That is genuinely one of the main distinguishing factors. There is obviously there's some nuance here. Now, the origin of the Kuei-jin is that they used to be known as the Wanxian, which translates to the 10,000 heroes. Way back in the day, the gods created them to be these immortal heroes, to protect the universe against, the forces that be. They were created to feed off the ambient chi in the area, just out in the world, where they could be all these immortal, super cool badasses. But they started to get all corrupted and shitty and evil. And they learned pretty quickly, hey, I can just get concentrated chi from people. That's pretty cool. And they also started sinning, a lot, doing a lot of shitty things, to where then their gods cursed them to now be undead creatures that have to feed off of blood to get their chi. To now they are undead vampires, specifically karmically cursed. That is the main deal. They're very tied in with Buddhist thought. Okay, so there's a thing you can become as a Kuei-jin called the Bodhisattvas, which are a legit thing in Buddhism, in Buddhist thought. Essentially, they are the strongest Kuei-jin. But other than that, like, they're genuinely really similar to Western Canaanites. There's not a lot separating them other than those distinguishing factors, but there's like just enough to call them something different. I don't know, it's weird. Anyways, the Kuei-jin moved in to go fight Zapsathura, and to make things better, they had 3 of those bodhisattvas I talked about. 3 of them moving in to go beat Zapsathura's ass. Now, you at home, you don't understand the power scaling of World of Darkness, so I will give you a second to pretend that that's impressive. Yeah, I know, right? 3 of them? Dude, how is he gonna survive that? Ridiculous. Also, one of them summoned a hurricane on the area to shield themselves from the sun so they could fight him, 24/7. And also just as like a big AoE attack. An AoE so big, it also just killed a fuck ton of mortals. This lasted a few days and was quite obvious to the mages, because faction number 2 that got involved, the mages. Now, I'm gonna have to get in the weeds here, but not so in the weeds that this takes forever. I am sorry, Mage the Ascension fans, all 3 of you. I adore your game, but your game is stupidly complicated, but I love it. Okay, so I'm not talking about the general magi that you will be playing in Mage the Ascension. I'm talking about the general villain faction that takes place in that game, the technocracy. So, mainline thing, in Mage the Ascension, magic is a thing in World of Darkness. To do magic, you have to realize that reality is fake and cringe. You realize that reality is shaped up by the belief of the universe. What people believe where they are shapes a consensus that is a literal thing, tangible force in our world. Everyone on Earth believes in a consensus, and this consensus, if people act against it, will actively strike back at you in the thing called paradox. And for example, the current age you and I live in is a consensus of logic and reason, one of science and technology. Technology built by the technocracy, a bunch of techno-mages, because all this shit we have nowadays is magic. Are you literally gonna sit here and tell me that you right now watching this video, your cell phone or your laptop or your computer, that is in any way different from a crystal ball? Literally, there's nothing different than you just got what? You got a little green little runic slate separating it from an orb of glass? Yeah, sure, whatever, Einstein. The technocracy wish to build this consensus of logic and reason because they want to achieve ascension with all of humanity, because the main goal of Mage the Ascension is, to ascend, where they think that all the other mages are real selfish for just wanting to ascend individually. Now, this sounds really positive and cool on paper, but the way they want to do it is with staunch authoritarianism and controlling your brain. It's not good. They are the absolute worst elements you can think of, every shitty element of government, bureaucracy, and capitalism. There are elements of the technocracy that is literally the New World Order that funded Nazism, and an entire organization of them that is quite literally the absolute shittiest parts of the capitalistic system. They don't like things that go against consensus. They call these reality deviants. Supernatural creatures are reality deviants. They see a bunch of vampires fighting in India. They don't like this, so they move in. How do they move in? Obviously, they move in their sunlight orbital mirrors over India and directly move them to channel the sun's rays and blast it right on the hurricane. Because obviously, that's what you do. Now, the sun lasers didn't fully work, so they also dropped Hellstorm neutron bombs, magically attuned nukes that fucked up spirits and the like. They dropped it on them, and finally, with those spirit nukes, the sun lasers, all of the Kuei-jin, finally, Zapsathura died. Which, by the way, it took a lot. The bodhisattvas did not kill him, all the damage, until eventually the hurricane itself subsided, and then the sun laser hit him, and it took a little bit still. It had to chew on him. The pure concentrated power of the sun, just a little bit, until he died and his blood just splattered everywhere. And his blood was still alive, where Clan Ravnos, all in the general area that wasn't dead, the single digits that weren't dead, started drinking his blood, because his death sent absolute insanity through his bloodline. This was day 4 of the Week of Nightmares, by the way, because the next 3 days were awful for Clan Ravnos, as Clan Ravnos was sent into a cannibalistic psychosis, as any member of Clan Ravnos that saw another member of the clan immediately went into an absolute blood frenzy and they started ripping each other apart. Those members of Clan Ravnos that were isolated though, they just kind of were like, damn, I'm a little peckish. That's weird. And then moved on with their lives. But if they saw another Clan Ravnos member, oh my God, ripping their throat out. And after those 3 days were over, it just stopped. Like that bloodthirst psychosis just ended, leaving the last few members of the clan just confused on what happened. As a lot of them weren't in India at the time. Like there were a lot of them just scattered all over the world. So they were just lost in what happened. And then now realizing maybe those survivors who kind of just murdered all the people they knew. And that is where the main events kind of end. But there's more. There's still more, as just more bullshit happens at the end of those 7 days. I'm gonna again try to hit these in chronological order, except for a few of these, there are no set dates. I'm gonna hit them as best I can. Again, these are also not super detailed and canon, so I'm gonna hit them as best I can. So you remember those spirit nukes that the technocracy set off? Well, yeah, it got really weird. So mainly, the spirit nukes shook the Umbra, which is the spirit world and the main setting of Wraith the Oblivion. It shook it enough that it also broke the abyssal prison that held the fallen angels that God locked away, creating the events of Demon the Fallen, you know, letting loose like Lucifer and stuff. So, the technocracy let the demons loose. Good news to you, I made the joke that there's 3 Mage the Ascension fans. This is for the 1 Changeling the Dreaming fan. The whole psychic shaking that Zapsthur's death happened set free the Adaheen up in the dreaming lands, whoever they are. I'll be real, I'm not a big Fae guy, so I have a vague understanding on who the Adaheen are, but don't worry, they're free now. And a pretty big one is the Dimensional Anomaly, or the Avatar Storm. Dimensional Anomaly is the technocracy's term, Avatar Storm is the mage term. This event is pretty catastrophic, as it is a giant fucking rift in dimensions that exploded out right at the end of the Week of Nightmares, and one of the main things that it did is it cut off a lot of extra dimensional travel, mainly in the fact that the higher-ups of the technocracy are absolutely locked off from contacting the people that run the technocracy in our dimension, in our world. This is like, you got your job, right? And you got your manager, like your general manager who runs everything. And then all the phone lines get cut to the guy above them, like the district manager. And then they just never reconnect the lines, ever. So the chain of command is gone with no idea of how to reconnect it, which is thrown a giant wrench into all of their plans. Which also, if you read the Mage, the Ascension core book, the 20th anniversary, specifically they give you a lot of information on the idea of whether or not in your chronicle, if this event is either ongoing currently, has happened, or has yet to happen, because this will actually impact what all the power structures look like in really interesting ways, actually. And then lastly, a little bit after the Week of Nightmares, on July 15th, 1999, a red star appeared in the night sky. A comet celestial object that was dubbed by many different names by the many different groups in the World of Darkness. To the vampires, it's known as Wormwood. To the changelings, it's known as the Eye of Baelor. To the mages, it's known as Telos. It's got a lot of different names. Mainly, this is one of the key signs to Gehenna. This also was at first only visible if you were able to perceive the unseen, as if, do you have Auspex? And then later, it was caught by NASA as an actual celestial object. Now, this thing has a weird history in that there's also a solid chance that it is a recurring object in Earth's history, as it seemingly has appeared multiple times. It once appeared long ago when a city known as Pompeii got a little covered in soot and ash, and you know, once graced our beautiful hollow earth when the lizard people lived on it. Yeah, just sprinkling that in here, Werewolf the Apocalypse, just sprinkling a little bit with this red comet lore that I guess this whole time that Earth is hollow Earth. By the way, this like small little detail, yeah, this entire time, hollow Earth, ancient lizard people, also the Nazis are in the center of the earth just doing something, investigating the lizard people. I don't know, man. There's a lot going on, and it's weird. I have like a half understand. I thought I knew World of Darkness, and learning about this, I realized I'm way in over my head. I'm scared.